Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Sultans and Sneakers. I'm your host, as always, Mahin, the podcaster. And on today's show, I'm really excited to have a brother who I've been following on Twitter for probably about the last year and a half, 2 years or so. Darrick, y'all may know him as Red Pill Muslim on Twitter. Um, People who listen to the Mad Memlooks may remember him from a show we did about Afghanistan when the whole Taliban takeover happened, because he had some intimate, he had some experience at least being in Afghanistan at some point, which we can maybe get into. But just to remind the listeners who may have maybe see him and see a familiar face, so to speak. But Darrick, first of all, thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate it.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on again. I love being on last time, and I just love being in this type of situation to, talk to you and just talk to the people.
Right. One of the things I try to do with my channel here is like, you're always trying to understand the why behind, like, what goes on between people's brains, right? Mm-hmm. And between the ears, so to speak. And on Twitter, you're getting little snippets of it, and you're seeing this guy's interested. You have similar interests, and you're like, this is a conversation I think that people can benefit from. And we were just talking offline just a minute ago about like how Twitter, sometimes we use Twitter as a tool. It's like a marketing tactic. It's almost like to give snippets. It doesn't give you, people shouldn't take Twitter verbatim necessarily, right? That's how I treat it, right? You might have to troll sometimes because it's a mechanism, and then you draw women to a longer conversation, right? Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example of what happened to me the other day. That's like last week. A friend of mine, he posted something about how he's like, it makes me happy when I see Muslim people working at airport security, like TSA or something. He tweeted that out, right? Mm-hmm. I quote tweeted. I just saw it and I was like, oh, okay. I'm gonna quote tweet him real quick. I don't think too much about it. I'm just like, I feel the same way about Muslim police officers, right? So a few days passed, nothing really happened. I got a DM from some dude on Friday night. He sent me a screenshot where some dude wrote a tirade of like, this guy has been platforming Nazis and he continues to peddle alt-right talking points, yada, yada, yada. I mean, because he interpreted it as like some kind of like Blue Lives Matter thing, but that wasn't even my intent. I just was like, just trying to just trying to jive with my boy. It was my friend's tweet. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what that's essentially what it is. Let me just, my camera seems to be out of focus or something. So I'm a little blurred, but okay. So yes, so that's kind of where I use it, and that's why I kind of got learned about you as Twitter, and I see your tweets. If people follow you only on Twitter, they could think you're pretty provocative and whatnot. But we'll get into that. But real quick, Darrick, just tell me a little bit about yourself as far as where you grew up, how your upbringing was, and all that.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Pretty much, I grew up in California, Northern California. I was in foster care. So the only reason why I put that out there is because that shaped a lot of who I am today, and that has given me so much experience into just the real world. So I grew up in foster care, finally got adopted by an amazing woman. I thank Allah every day for her. And I don't know if you want to go into it now, but that first foster family that I was with, actually, they, I guess, baptized me, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. And from a young age, I actually was believing in God, / Christianity, I guess. And then I wound up actually leaving it at such a young age. Maybe I could go into that later. And then I went to actually another foster home after that, which actually lived with a pastor and his wife. That was interesting. And so after that, I got adopted. I'm just going through life, just kind of like any other non-Muslim person. I don't know anything about religion. I don't know anything about politics. I'm just some kid.
Right.
And so I'm just moving around these different cities in Northern California. I'm just chilling. And I pretty much hit to high school. And I would say that's when things kind of started to change. I don't know what it was, but I just had this urge to find out about the military. I don't know what it was, honest. I don't know if it was a commercial. Yeah. I don't know. But I'm like, the military, the army, it sounds cool. It sounds cool.
What year is this, by the way?
So this had to be around 2006. Actually, earlier than that. I graduated 2007, so that means, yeah, I'll say 2003 or four. Yeah, I started really considering it, looking at it. Actually made a whole book, printing stuff out. Okay, the different things about the military, and I was just like, man, I want to get out my mom's house. I want to make my own money.
Right.
I want to travel. Let's do that. I'm like, sign me. It may be hard, but let's sign up. And so basically, as soon as I graduated high school, so that, yeah, June 2007, I went to boot camp October 2007, right there. Right. So a very short time, and that pretty much started my Army journey. It was a hell of a journey. I went to Afghanistan. Obviously, if people didn't know, I went to Afghanistan. I went to a few other countries too, training, Poland, Romania, Germany. I was stationed in Germany. So alhamdulillah, I got to experience the world, man. That's one thing I really loved. I really was able to have that discipline also, which really shaped me now. Before I used to be kind of like the shy kid and the whole foster care thing, like really, there's a lot of issues with that. So that actually gave me the confidence I needed as a man. So alhamdulillah for that experience. And basically, after the fast forward, right before I left the Army, I actually had a friend, and subhanallah, it's all, Allah first, but Allah used this individual to pretty much start literally everything. I'll never forget, inshallah, short story. I was in the barracks in Germany one time, and he actually came into my room. We were friends, but we weren't close, but we were friends though. And he actually came in my room and was like, he was like, hey bro, what's up? You want to go in my room and watch a documentary? I'm like, about what? He was about 9/11. I'm like, whoa, okay, hold on now, hold on. Let's pump the brakes, bro. Pump the brakes.
Right.
I'm gonna watch my language carefully, right? I don't want people getting shadow banned or nothing like that. But pretty much, it was a very, very provocative documentary. And I'm like, bro, I kept on fighting. I'm like, nah, bro, we already know what happened. Just those people, just, let's just, stay out of it. Let's move on with our lives. It's sad, but let's move on. And he was like, okay, bro, if you don't like the first 2 minutes, you can leave. I'm like, all right, can't beat that. Can't beat that. I go in the room. My mouth is hanging open. I'm like, what is this? And so, subhanallah, after that day, pretty much after that day, not too long after, I wound up going to another duty station when I'm getting out of the Army. But that stuck with me forever, because he actually opened my eyes to the real world. I used to think, the government's not that bad. They do stupid stuff. They're corrupt, but they're not that bad. They're not like Stalin or Mao. Come on now. the American government, come on,
Right.
I had that mentality. Yeah, I was in for a shocker. and so that set the base for everything. I got out the military, and me and him stayed in contact. And
this dude was a Muslim, right?
He was not Muslim.
Right. Okay. But he was in the military as well.
He was in the military, as well. We got out, stayed in contact with him. And then me and him are still in contact. And then I received a letter in the mail. And he actually tells me he was actually in prison. He actually went to prison, and he actually wrote me a letter saying that he converted to Islam. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, bro. He's like, yeah, bro, you should look into this religion. I just converted. To this day, I forgot what I sent him. He was like, yeah, can you print some stuff out and send it to me? I don't know. I'm not sure if it was Hadith or Quran. I don't know what it was. Right. I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I'm like, talk to me about it when you get out. Come to California, because he's from New York. I'm like, come to California, tell me about it, inshallah, and then we'll go from there. But the only reason why I actually was going to talk to him about it, because at that time I was agnostic. I was agnostic. So people don't know, you're 50-50. You're not saying he does exist. You're not saying he doesn't exist. So that's agnostic, right? 50-50 on the fence.
Would you say that's like the majority? I feel like the majority of people that you talk to on an everyday basis kind of fall on that agnostic. If you actually boil it down, like really ask them, I feel like that's what it is. Would you agree with that, by the way?
I would agree in one way, because subhanAllah, the arrogance of them is arrogance. They like to use these other terms because they're too afraid to use God. Oh, it's the universe. Oh, it's the simulation. Bro, just say God. Let's stop playing around. It's really.
Hmm.
And so I would say, yeah, majority of people are agnostic, even if they don't want to admit it.
Right.
Let's keep whatever name they want to label it. That's what they are.
Right.
And so the fact that I actually took him up on actually looking into Islam was because he taught me about going back to that film I watched. He opened my eyes to the real world. So I'm like, man, if he's on to that, he opened my eyes to that. Maybe let's revisit religion again. Let me give that one more shot because I really didn't care about it.
Hmm.
And he wind up staying in prison a little bit longer. So I'm like, you know what? Let me research it myself. You know, I'm a researcher. I like looking at things. Let me do it myself.
Yep.
And so pretty much just to condense it all, I pretty much started from square one. You know, let me look at all the religions again. Let me not just look at Islam. Let me look at Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism. Let me look at all of them. And over time, they were just getting eliminated one by one by one. Then your final, I guess your two finalists was Christianity and Islam. And I'm like, man, both of these are like really good. You know, morally, ethically, they were on par.
Hmm.
I'm like, damn, I don't know what to do. But I went to different churches. I went to different musheds. Like I was talking to these people. Like I wasn't playing around. I really wanted to know if God existed.
Right.
And pretty much what it boiled down to is that Christianity couldn't explain who God was. You know, like the center thing you're calling me to worship this God, but depending on who I talk to in Christianity or denomination, you guys tell me different things. You know, you tell me that, oh, there's a Trinity, but then I talk to another one. They're like, yeah, we believe in that Trinity, but not that Trinity they're talking about. Or yeah, we believe Jesus is the Son, but not God, and vice versa. So all these different combinations, I'm like, come on, man. If you guys can't even agree who your God is, then how's this real? That's a
Right.
problem.
Right. Hmm.
That's a
Right.
problem.
Hmm.
And so Islam is easy. Allah is one. You know, you can't compare him to anything or anyone. He's
Right.
one. He has no partners. Don't associate him with anything. I'm like, okay, that's simple. And deep down in my heart, being with the brothers and going to the mosque and just being with them, alhamdulillah, you know, Allah guided me, took my shahada, and here I am now.
Yeah. So Northern California, you're talking like, is this like the Bay Area or like Sacramento, or what
It's
generally?
also the Central Valley, like Stockton, Modesto,
Oh,
Tracy.
okay.
The
I
central,
got you.
yeah,
I
the
got you. I
Central
got you.
Valley area.
I
Mm-hmm.
want to back up. The military. So the military to me is actually, I've always been fascinated with the military. You know how a lot of Muslims have this like antagonistic view towards the military in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
like and I think maybe in some cases rightfully so, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think from an individual point of view, because I had two of my best friends were Marines, and they were both Muslim too. I grew up with them. And I remember my first friend, they went after another. My first friend, he enrolled like 98. He was like 98, 99, right? And it's before 9/11. And I remember he went to boot camp, and then I watched Full Metal Jacket, and I was just like, yo, this is kind of dope, man. Because the discipline, I think what appeals to um guys in general, I don't know if like, I feel like we're always, I think every man has this like innate desire to like want to better themselves, right? And sometimes it gets squashed in a way, and it's almost like the fitra. It's there, but it's beaten down so bad. But like when you're a kid, you have those ambitions. And high school, I think I was like my freshman year in college, and I was in school, but I didn't understand like what I was gonna study. I couldn't get it figured out. And I saw that my friend had he comes back, and then we're like, he's hitting me up for like 7 a.m. runs. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of like this discipline that
Mm-hmm.
my friend who I grew up with, because he wasn't that type of dude. You know what I mean? Like he actually joined. He told me he joined. He was like, it sounded cool, and I like blowing shit up. So like you got to play with this kind of these toys,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's before 9/11, and I had the recruiter come to my house and all that, and I was intrigued with like the Navy SEALs, and I would go and research like the United States Naval Academy and see their class, because I was in college, and I was like, hey, man, how can I incorporate like a military regiment to my schedule? Like you see
Mm-hmm.
the Naval Academy, and they get up, they got reveille at 5 a.m. and all this stuff, and how are they squashing getting all this stuff to do, and they're doing engineering degrees, and they're playing a sport, right? And I was just like fascinated by it, because I'm like, these are kids my age who are getting a lot more done than what I'm getting done, right?
Mm-hmm.
My dad put a stop to that. He came in, he was like, you don't need the military to be disciplined. You can just do it yourself. And obviously, I think you can, but I feel like when you're young and you're like, you can get put into a system that gives you no other choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's always been my assessment of it. And that's why I've always had an appreciation for it, I think. And that's why when you like, because I remember like I shared something, my daughter is reading like Jocko Willink's books, right? And he's a Navy SEAL.
Oh yeah.
And I posted about it on Instagram, and somebody hit me up like, "Oh, isn't he like, he's part of the military?" I'm like, "Yo, the books are fine, bro. I mean, like, yeah, yeah, he was there in Iraq. We don't have to agree with the actions he took out, but there's a lot of benefit in some of the stuff he's teaching.
Mm-hmm.
If I can incorporate some of that stuff to young kids, there's nothing wrong with it. And that I think that's a takeaway. There's always a benefit, even in something you might fundamentally disagree with. They might be doing something else that no one else is doing on top of their game. You get what I'm saying? So that's my appreciation. My other question was, since you were pretty clear on why you went into the military, just to travel the world, and it seemed cool and stuff. So civilians will always, when they see someone in uniform, will always say, "Well, thank you for your service," or "a veteran," and all that kind of stuff. How do you feel about that? Because it seems like maybe people aren't going in the military to serve the country. They're going in to get a GI Bill, or travel the world, or learn discipline, or something else. There isn't like this innate patriotism where I'm going to go fight for Uncle Sam.
Yeah, you're right. Everyone has their own reason, ranging from the guy who just wants to have that college money to that crazy guy who just wants to legally kill people, right? You have that guy also. Like, you have two ends of the spectrum and everybody in the middle, right? And so I already stated the reasons why I went in there. For me, when people say that, because like you said, since everyone does have their own reasons, once again, I didn't look at myself being patriotic, woohoo, American flag, stuff like that. So I feel uncomfortable. And your average veteran, I would say, is very humble, and they're like, they feel weird when people say this. Like, I didn't like go over there and fight Hitler or anything. It's like, we're actually, fighting for people who actually had bad intentions, the politicians and stuff. So in a way, we're like, we don't really want to be associated with that, and a lot of the times, at least in my, only Allah knows the heart, but it seems that these people, they have maybe this, I don't know if it's a guilty complex. Maybe they voted for the war, so they have to tell you if they see you in uniform. Or I have the USAA card. Sometimes they see it and they're like, "Oh, you were in the military. Oh, thank you for your service." And I'm like, it's like almost an obligation for them to say it, almost like a tick, know. And I'm like, I just don't feel any sincerity about it. The only time I would say I felt sincerity, like legit sincerity, when someone said it, was when I was in the airport in Sacramento. I was in uniform. I was, just going home on leave, whatever. And then this like random lady and it was like the airport was almost empty. It was at nighttime, and this random lady just walked up to me, or almost kind of shuffled to me. It was like, "Oh my gosh, I love you guys. Thank you guys for what you're doing." And like almost like started to cry, almost like she was like really like hysterical, all her emotions about it. Like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." It's like, I'm like, oh, and I'll say she probably in her late 20s, maybe early 30s. That with that type of energy I felt, I could tell that was legit. All the other ones was like, thank you. Because for me, what is it? Actions speak louder than words, right?
Right.
So if you really cared about us, then how about speaking on our behalf when it comes to how about stopping these wars, or helping us get medical benefits, better medical benefits, or better educational benefits? Let's start there. I don't want that, once again, I don't know if it's fake or not. I don't want that show you're putting on. Thank you for your service. You're just saying it. Well, show me, because other than that, you're just going on with your life, not thinking about us at all, which I don't blame you, because everyone has their own life. We're just a soldier, whatever. I don't expect you to think about us 24/7, but just because you see me in uniform, you just, I don't know. It just, yeah.
I hear you. Okay. So let's segue into like, I guess politics and a little bit about that, but really, I guess, how many years have you been on Twitter now?
Since I checked, 2013 or 2014.
Okay. And have you always been red pill Muslim, or is that a more recent like avatar?
That's a good question. Because I started the Twitter when Periscope was still out, actually.
Oh, Periscope. Oh man, is Periscope still around?
No, it's not. No, not anymore.
Oh, okay.
They shut it down. But actually, that's where I started, and it actually had a really big following on there.
Really? Okay.
And since you have to put your what was it, the username, whatever, as the same as your Twitter, because you're connected. I believe I had it from the start.
Okay.
I had it from the start, if I'm correct.
Okay, so when you think about because red pill has all these connotations, right? I was the other day we were recording a show for the Mad Mamluks, and post Ramadan special, and Chuck Amr was like, she's one of my co-hosts, was like, hey, I'm sorry to be ignorant, but the only thing I think about Red Pill is that Matrix movie. I don't know nothing else about it, because we were talking about Kevin Samuels, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right, because he just passed away, and I told him like, well, at least you got the Matrix reference. If you just said you thought about Advil or Tylenol, that would have been really like,
Yeah.
man, get out of here now. But when you think about, so when you like Red Pill, do you like, what does that mean? Like, why did you pick that moniker? Because it's a solid moniker from a purely branding point of view. And I know sometimes when I started my own channel, sometimes I would think about like, even if you're not like, you feel like, do you make a title as provocative as the Red Pill Muslim podcast? And I just realized my skin just isn't thick enough to like put myself out there like that. But what's your reason behind it?
Well, originally I didn't even want to, I guess, have Muslim or anything in my username. I forgot the actual thing you have, or the handle, right? The handle.
The handle, yeah.
For me, I was just looking for other little nicknames that I went by in high school, or little other names I like, but they're all taken. All taken. And then so I'm like, okay, I'm really trying to think, bro. I'm really trying to think.
It's not important what the name was, but I just want to understand the idea, the mentality, the mindset behind picking the name. Like why, like what appealed to you about Red Pill, and what does that mean to you, I guess?
I would say that it was, like you mentioned, it was a Matrix reference, because if you look, when I created my account, that was way before this whole Red Pill Manosphere wave. It was way before that, so there's no way I could have got it from there unless I was like some like OG or something like that.
Right.
So for me, it was purely Matrix reference. And I added Muslim, like I was mentioning before, is because that's what it is. Literally, I got the Red Pill. Allah showed me the truth. He gave me a decision. Either you want to keep living this bland, dry, no purpose, 9 to 5, quote unquote, just life that you don't have an understanding of the real world, or you can have reality right here. You have reality, you have the full deal, you have purpose in life. This is the truth. And I'm like, boom, let me take that. And since I don't think a lot of people remember the Matrix or really care about it, I'm like, okay, I think Red Pill, I think that's probably going to work in this. And then boom, they accepted it. So I'm like, cool.
That's a really interesting point that you just mentioned, because when we I don't know what you do for work, but like when I would go to work, and especially Ramadan, I'm like fasting and stuff, but you look around you and you're like, there are people here who like ain't got a clue, like as far about Islam goes, right? Like, and it's interesting because you know your point of view is always gonna be because you remember that life before, like you actually took the red pill in a sense, right? I was born into the faith, and yeah, there was a point in time when I transitioned into being practicing, right? But it was already there. I don't know. I don't think we can ever relate to that idea of completely not knowing Allah or not knowing the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then knowing him, and you know what I'm saying, knowing them. So I think that's a really interesting. Like I actually never thought about it that way. So it's a really insightful analogy that Islam in itself is like the red pill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. So, but since right now, obviously, the narrative is dominated with the red pill manosphere, people automatically assume that, and brother, that's wrong. You can't use that name, and it's like, bro, you don't even know. Just ask me where I got it from. Like you just ask me where I got it from. And it's the truth. Islam is the truth. So
yeah, exactly. I think that's where people think about. I think that's where it draws to them a little bit. So as you going back to the whole watching the documentary and then seeing what the government, kind of seeing what that is, I guess it sounds like you started to like wake you up to like distrust of the government. Would you say that is your politics more or less centered around that? Like, hey, we must question the government for all things first and foremost, and then like assume shadiness and then work from there?
I would say, like that's the easiest way to put it is like this. I was in the military, and I believe in protecting people. That's another reason why I joined, because I really want to protect people. I love helping people. I was raised to do that. My mom put emphasis on that, and so anyone who's oppressed, I have real major problems with that. Whoever the oppressor is, I got major problems with that. And so looking into the government and how they act and stuff, if it was your, as one guy says, if this was your average like boss hog guy who just, let's say you're a corrupt mayor who just, skim money off the top. Okay, he's not a good guy, but is he really trying to hurt you, depopulate, all poison you? No, he's not trying to. He's just trying to get rich. If it was that in this world, then I honestly wouldn't be even doing this political stuff at all. I would not care. But from my research and my analysis, we have legit, really, really, really evil people in charge. Just look at the dictators of the past. Just because those personalities are gone and dead, their ideas still linger and people want to copy them. And so for me, I'm like, no, I have to add my 2 cents in, and inshallah, if it could wake people up, bring awareness to the situation, then potentially we could save lives. We could have people fight against them within the Islamic limits, obviously, and have some legit change in this world. I just can't stand by and just know about this stuff and just like, well, that's just politics. I'm like, what do people say? I'm not into politics. I'm not into politics. Okay, but when it happens to you, then it's a different story. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't wait until it just happens to us. We should be helping humanity, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
I got you. So let's take a couple let's take the recent one, Russia Ukraine, this whole thing popping off, right? Mm-hmm. You've been pretty outspoken about this affair. What is so I'm gonna ask you 2 questions. What is the mainstream narrative for those who aren't like? Because it hasn't really interested me too much, right? But since I think you're educated on the topic, you've educated yourself. What's the mainstream narrative, and okay, ask me that. Tell me. Let's talk about that first. What is the narrative that the mainstream wants us to swallow on Russia and Ukraine?
So basically, the narrative, the mainstream narrative, is that because there has to be some type of context, right? There has to be some. I can't just go right into it, right? So right. we know, but I'm going to try to shorten it, inshallah.
Sure.
So we all know the Cold War, right? With the Soviet Union and everybody else, the West, and them fighting back and forth,
right?
And so pretty much the narrative right now is that Soviet Union, those bad evil Russians, they're still out to get us, even though that the wall fell and all that stuff. The Russians, or the Russian government, which say not the people, the Russian government, they're still out to get us. Till now, they haven't stopped. They're out to get us. Mm-hmm. And now, when we look at Trump, any other type of thing that could interfere with American politics on any level, well, who's the first people they blame, right? Russia. Russia did it. Russia.
Yep.
Every little thing is Russia. They stubbed their toe. It's Russia did it. Mm-hmm. And so they have to have that precedence of a boogeyman, right? That just like, as we know, Muslims, we were it for the terrorists, they're it for a while, right?
Right.
They have to have that. And so now, fast forward till now, Russia is the center of attention. And the only reason I'm hesitating is because there's so many little reasons what they say, but the most common one right now, going from recent history, is they meddled in our elections.
Yep.
And they are trying to install a Russian puppet in Ukraine, in the surrounding Central Asian countries. So that's their narrative right there. They're trying to.
And there's this threat of nukes, of Putin using nukes, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's that. That. Well, yes, that is true. But obviously, he upped his rhetoric after he invaded.
Right.
Obviously.
Right. Okay. So now, what is the And so now, which you're, and as I think as Muslims, we saw all those Ukrainian support Ukrainian flags and this and that. I'm like, okay, that's cool and all, but like, where y'all been about other people's rights for like decades, right? Palestine and Syria and all this stuff. Like, what's going on here? And I think that in itself makes Muslims by default kind of like suspicious. Like, all of a sudden we care, and there's a whole. It was that CNN reporter like, oh, this country isn't like most countries, and this is a civilized European country that's being invaded, kind of thing. Like, oh, it only matters because of them. But like, what do you think? Like, because it's like people could read your tweets and feel like you've got a kind of a um almost like a pro Russia rhetoric going on. However, again, we talked about Twitter. Twitter isn't what it actually is. Like, you don't take things on Twitter literally, so to speak, right? Um, what when you're tweeting about Russia, Ukraine, I guess what's the message you're trying to get across is what I'm trying to ask.
As you know, I try to be provocative. I have to. That's a part of who I am and what I like to
Right.
put out there. But once again, we know the official narrative. We know the official narrative. Like I said, Russia's the bad guy. They want to influence that region. Some people, some of the guys, the CNN say, "Oh, he wants to establish the Soviet Union again." Right? Russia is a powerhouse, number one, superpower in the world. And so that's the narrative. And what I like to do is counter that narrative, especially when I see that there's insincerity behind it. So like you mentioned, Ukraine, all these companies, Ukraine flags, all this marketing, all this money, Biden sending billions of dollars every week to Ukraine. So, but guess what? You say anything against that? Well, can we send at least a couple billion to Detroit, or can we have some? Can we at least do some more manufacturing jobs here, or something like that? Oh, you're pro Putin. You're pro Putin. What are you, a Russian spy? Just like they did Trump. So anytime you see two extremes like that, and they don't give you any middle leeway, then you kind of know something is kind of shady, right? And so for me, I'm going to push back. I'm like, no. Just like how you guys are talking about the Ukrainian people and how it's very sad, which it is sad that they're at war right now and people are dying. It's horrible and sad, but no one is, no one's shedding a tear for all the Russians, for all those sanctions affected. There are millions of Russians who lost businesses. They're poor. They're on the streets now. What about them? But once again, if I say something about that, oh, you're pro Putin, you're pro Russia. What? So once again, I have to be provocative. It may seem, I guess, Russia leaning, but no. Once again, I'm against all forms of oppression. I don't care who it's from, But I want to highlight Russia or the Russian people because, once again, like you said, it's only select people who get the poor, me, and the pity, And right now it's the Ukrainians. But I'm like, no, give it to everyone who I guess deserves it or who is entitled to. The Russians are suffering just as much too.
Right. And I think that's because you're essentially giving a voice to the voiceless. Is what it seems like there, right?
All right, so I just want to give some context, some background into the whole Ukraine/Russia conflict going on right now. So, because Putin invaded, everyone's crying about it. He's the evil demon, but people don't know the other side. They don't know his motives. They don't know why he's doing it. So there's a little bit of background, factual background. Anyone can look this up. I'm not hiding anything, or there's not conspiracy theories, right? So the first thing is that back when the Soviet Union broke up, NATO and Russia had an agreement that NATO would not push further east because, right, NATO, Russia, we're rival enemies. We hate each other. And Russia, and at that time, all the NATO states we have right now weren't there, like the Baltic states and certain Eastern European countries. They weren't there at that time. They were just their own little newly independent countries. So Russia actually had a buffer between NATO and them, right? So it was cool. They weren't really tripping, but they were like, do not move east, NATO, because guess what? We're going to consider that a threat. That's military. That's a military threat to us. But over the decades, NATO has been, trying to get these countries on board. So we have like the Baltic states, right? We have the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia, become part of NATO. We have some of the Eastern European countries being a part of NATO. And so now we have NATO countries on the Russian border right now. But still, Russia was, Putin was like, okay, fine, I don't like it, just don't get any closer. And now Ukraine is closest they're going to allow, even though Ukraine isn't a part of NATO, let's be clear, it's not a part of NATO, but they have a Western-backed, NATO-backed government. So that's going into point two. So the first point was NATO was moving close to the border over decades. Putin said stop, knock it off. They kept doing it, so he pissed them off. Second is in 2014, there was a coup in Ukraine. Their elected government, yes, he was a Russian puppet, but he was elected, right? He got overthrown in 2014, and the Western/NATO-backed government is in now. So once again, that's pretty much NATO on his border, on his doorstep. What did he just say? Knock it off. I don't want you guys near me. And so after that coup, the eastern part of the country, which identifies more with Russia than Ukraine, they're like, no, we're not going to recognize this Western-backed government. We're not, or this NATO government. We're not going to do that. So they actually put up arms. They actually are fighting the Ukrainian military / government. And that's been going on since 2014. Now, the key here is that according to Russia, this part I can't verify, but according to Russia, over the years, ever since that coup when the eastern side been fighting with the western, western part of Ukraine, the whole government, there has been genocide, there has been massacres going on of those Ukrainians in that eastern Ukrainian area. And so Putin pretty much said, hey, if I didn't invade, they were starting a military operation to take back the whole region from that Russian, the Russian influenced area in eastern Ukraine, right? The Donbass area. He said if we would have just not done anything, the Ukrainian military would have went in and started genocide and wiping people out. And I would say there might be something to that, because as we know, in the Ukrainian military, there is a whole Nazi battalion called the Azov battalion. You can just look it up. There are no Nazis. It's admitted. The commander even got the highest award in the nation, Hero of Ukraine, which boggles me. Like, really, the commander of the Nazi battalion, whatever. This president gave it to him. Literally gave it to him during this war. Look it up. It's all public. And so obviously, naturally, that's going to piss Putin off. And the third reason why Putin is pissed off and he invaded is because he does not want Western society or culture imported into his lands, in his space. And he said that, look at his speeches. Once again, look at his speeches. He'll say that he's not cool with the whole transgender, forced, homosexuality push on kids and all the other things that Western countries do to turn everything upside down. Men and women are equal. You could do anything, anywhere. Be free as long as you're not hurting anybody. Just be a free soul. Do whatever you want. And Russia is like, no. It's mostly a Christian nation, Orthodox Christians, right? A very sizable Muslim population too. So they're very traditional. And Putin said, clear cut, we're going to maintain our traditions. We're not going to do all this Western upside down stuff. We're going to stick with our traditional roots, our religious roots. We're going to stick that way. We're going to stick to that. Now, if they have somebody on the border who is totally opposed to that, and they're also a military threat, then that's a problem, obviously, and he's not going to put up with that. So that is why Putin is pissed off. That's why he does not want to give an inch to the Ukrainian government, and he wants to take over. I don't know if he wants to take over the whole thing or just parts of it, but he definitely wants to have some type of control over that country and pretty much tell NATO to knock it off. Because remember, before NATO didn't stop, but now they're really thinking like, okay, he's serious. Yeah, he's serious. And now he's saying he's going to use nukes. He's really serious. But once again, we're dealing with some of the people on the Western / NATO backside. These people are, once again, this is not me making this up. They're war hawks, right? They're warmongers. They want war, right? Because their pockets are filled by the defense contractors, right? We all know this is public. So they're egging on the war also. They're egging it on. That's why they keep sending weapons. And Putin said, if you send weapons, all those vehicles you're sending weapons with, guess what? They're legitimate targets for us. I don't care if it's an American, a French dude, a German, whatever. If you guys enter Ukraine shipping weapons in, we will attack you. So Putin's letting them know, knock it off, or there's going to be nuclear war and we will attack you. We don't care. We don't care that you're directly not involved. You're still involved because you're giving weapons to the enemy from their perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and then we have Finland, and there's another country. Right now, Finland, they want to join NATO, right? Russia said, don't do that. That's another country on their border, right? That's a problem. So they're antagonizing Russia. They're poking the Russian bear, and people are pissed off when the Russian bear bites back, And once again, there's legit, I believe that the Ukrainian people have legit points. They don't want an invader. Nobody wants to be invaded, right? Right. They have a horrible history with the Russians in the past under Stalin. They just famine, just genocide, killed the Ukrainian people. So that they're still coming back from that. Like their grandparents suffered through that. So Ukrainian people have legit gripes, and they have a legit foot to stand on in this conflict. So for me personally, it's not about taking sides, but at the same time, I'm about being fair, and I don't like anyone being oppressed. The Ukrainians are being oppressed right now, obviously by certain Russian elements and even their own government in certain ways. But also the Russian people themselves are being oppressed. Also, right? All those sanctions financially just cripple the country. They're making a comeback, but man, so many Russians are homeless. I mean, they lost all their savings. All their businesses got shut down. I was actually talking to a guy from Chechnya, and he said the IT section has been decimated. All the services. Remember, everybody's pro Ukraine. No one's dealing with Russia no more. No Russian business. We're kicking you out. He said they're all gonna do. They have to do with. Everyone's going to Turkey now. When it comes to getting those services for IT and stuff now, because no one's going to deal with Russia on the western end. So no one's caring about them. So I care about everybody, Ukrainians and Russians. So that's my little, I guess, Cliff Notes version of the conflict. I'm by far no expert, but this is just a surface view. And if you want to research more into it, be my guest.
I appreciate it, man. So, and I don't know, like, since we're talking about like government interference and all this kind of stuff, right? So let's talk about COVID-19. Since you've been pretty vocal about that too, and you're in California.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you follow my channel. I've had a couple conversations about it. I had a conversation with Dr. Mohammed Gilan, who advocates for the vaccine, and I also had a conversation with Dr. Abdullah bin Hamid Ali, who does not, right? And just to put it out there, I myself am vaccinated, and I got one booster back in like November or something, right? So I have my take on things, but I kind of want to hear like because you've been also vocal about it, and I guess, how have you been able to, like, you're taking a position, and you and Dr. Abdullah both have in a state that is like the most militant pro-vaccine state in the country, right?
Yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah, right. It's, bro, it's crazy. So for me, once again, I gotta tread carefully because I don't want no one shadow ban or anything like that. So I'm not getting any details about medicine. But I would say this: my issue isn't really with the vaccine itself. Partially, I would say my main issue is that they're not giving us a choice. That is my issue with it. You guys are not giving us a choice, or quote unquote, what are they doing? They're almost forcing us, right? And I don't have any notes in front of me, but there's numerous political officials have got caught saying, well, guess what? Since they're not going to take it, we're going to make their life harder so they can take it. And so for me, that's not cool. What happened to, freedom of expression, freedom of choice? All these democracies, Western countries, they preach about freedom, choose for yourself, all this kind of, individualism, all this stuff. But when it comes to this vaccine, they want to hammer us with it. They want to force us. They want to make our life a living hell in order to take it. And then obviously we know about big pharma, blah, 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 right? So conflict of interest, the media, all the different powers that be,
right,
together. For me, once again, it does not seem sincere. It does not seem like these people are out for our genuine interest. Now, once again, if they were like, hey, take it, don't take it, we're not going to discriminate, because it's discrimination at this point. Some people have privileges if they do, some people don't have privilege. That's discrimination right there, right? And so if they weren't doing that so hard, if they weren't so militant and, I guess, authoritarian with it, and I honestly wouldn't even comment on it. I'd be like, okay, they're giving us a choice. We're all still equal. We're all good. We all get the same privileges. It's whatever. But they took it too far. They took it too far, especially when you go, like you said, woke Australia, woke UK, beating grandmas, choking teenagers out, arresting kids. It's out of control, and I'm not going to stand for it. That's
right.
Not.
Yeah, and your own governor, I think before the vaccine, Newsom, I think he was caught attending like parties and stuff without masking. He was talking about everyone needing to be masked up, and they caught him being there, and I think what happened, I think so. I've got to tread carefully here too, because I kind of work in big pharma. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna leak where, but it doesn't affect. But to me, the irritation is, the frustration with it is, logically speaking, I'm like, once the vaccine's available, you take it for your own protection, right? If you choose not to take it, I took mine. You don't want to take it? it's, but I expect then the vaccine to work,
Mm.
right? Same with the flu shot, right? The flu shot is something. Now, granted, there are cases, and I'm like, what point do you gotta like, do we? And I think right now is people. I think people are now, as you talk to them, they just have fatigue over it. You know, right now, okay, so in Illinois, does California still have a state mask mandate? By the way,
No,
okay,
no.
they pulled it. So I maybe there's no, maybe there's no other state of country that has it, but they're talking about this, like you read the news and there's like this sub variant that's creeping up or something, right, from Omicron. And I don't know if you ever got COVID. I actually had Omicron back in early January, right? It was fairly mild. I had a cold. Now I was vaccinated too, right? But I'm also older than I'm not like super physically fit. I'm getting there. I'm working on my fitness for the last year and a half or so. But to me, it's almost like this fatigue of like, oh, now this new variant out there, and you watch the news, and they were like, um, although they say it's mild, but it's more contagious, and hey, their recommendation, they're like, oh, we start recommending you guys start wearing masks again. There's no mandate yet, but you're like almost like, come on, man, not again. It's like they'll come through and like, all right, we made it, no more masks, and we'll go for a few months, and then it'd be like, all right, got a mask, got to come back now. And I'm just like, I'm freaking tired of it. I'm like, human beings are not designed to wear masks all the time,
Mhm.
forever. And I think some people have this mindset that, well, we're just gonna wear masks all the time. And there's also question, and with the recent variants, they've openly said the only masks that work are those N95 ones that give some kind of effectivity, right?
Mhm.
So now you got people wearing all kinds of junk on their face. None of it works. And a lot of it, and then next thing, if you're at a gathering with them, next thing you know, it's on their neck. So it's not even doing anything for them. I'm like, at this point, you're just virtue signaling in a sense. So yes, I got the vaccine. I like told my parents make sure they got it and stuff. I'm all that whatnot. I'm okay with I think my oldest daughter got hers, but at the same time, it's just like you have to live your life,
Mhm.
right? You can't go through life just this pandemic. And I think what affected people in a sense is that the narrative, the goalposts kept changing over time, right? In the beginning, it was like it's 2 weeks, and we're only doing this to like because the hospitals are at their limits, right? As far as that, and then once the hospitals got under control, we got the vaccine and stuff. We had some spikes here and there, but I don't know. I just felt like so. Yeah, I definitely see your point. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't you know see, but I think looking back at history, we're gonna be like probably giving people the option was probably the best option to go forward with, right? Um, Granted, what I did find interesting, we can segue into the Manosphere here. A lot of what I saw in the Manosphere, in the non-Muslim Manosphere, so to speak, I felt like the vaccine pushing anti-vaccine rhetoric in the Manosphere, to me, it felt like the opposite extreme as far as like you can't take the vaccine. If you like take the vaccine, you're a simp. You know what I mean? Or you know, it's kind of like it's almost like identity politics flipped. You
Yes.
understand? I don't know if you ever felt that vibe or not. I was in some of these Telegram groups with these guys, and I would see it all the time, and I'd be like, listen, some guy like a guy like Alex Cortez, right?
Mhm.
Alex Cortez is one of the most physically fit dudes out there,
Mhm.
right? He probably is a low risk individual. He don't need to take the he probably if he wants to make that decision, probably makes more sense for him not to. But then you got cats who are like who are part of his following or in that manosphere, so to speak, not in the best physical shape, and they're like adamant they ain't gonna take it. They'd rather die. And I'm like, are you really like serious? Like it's not like the sword to die on, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. What's your take on that? Because to me, I felt like a lot of people were on the anti-vax. They hadn't really thought it through themselves. They themselves were maybe at risk, and they were just on some bandwagon.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I seen what you're saying, and for me, that actually stems from, I guess, outside the manosphere, just American society or culture at large. Because what did they do with the vaccine? Once they got some pushback on it, they split it into one camp and the other camp, right? Democrats pro-vaccine, conservatives or Republicans anti-vaccine. So after they established that's what it was, and if you see any type of legislation or the different state governors, depending on what party they were, you could tell Republicans tend to be more anti, Democrats tend to be more pro, right? And so obviously, since that's the standard now, that's going to go into the different, I guess, subsections of the culture of the of America. And so going right into the manosphere, generally are more on the conservative, right side of things. That's naturally that's going to be their position is anti-vaccine. Once again, if you don't take it, sorry, if you do take it, then you're part of the problem, and you're a hypocrite and you're weak. You didn't outlast it. Once again, I think all that's just craziness. Since day one, just give us a choice. Just treat us equal. That's my thing. I don't care if you're pro against it. Me, I'm not even pro or against it. Are there some vaccines that I would take? Sure. Are there some that I wouldn't? Sure. So I'm not on either side, but they made it into a partisan issue, a whole Republican, Democrat, a political issue instead of a scientific issue. That's why, at least in my personal opinion, that's why you have all this chaos and all these different camps and stuff. So
Cool. What's your how would you describe your research methodology when you're talking about trying to get more aware of issues? Like, what are your sources? Because this is something that I'm trying to work on. I think a lot of people would benefit from trying to understand how do we start understanding the world for what it is, right? There's books out there, but then people want to know which books do you read. There's articles, there's blogs. What's if there's an issue you're interested in, how do you go by systematically trying to get more educated on the issue?
Everyone has their own methods, obviously, so I can only speak for myself.
Yep.
The most important thing is you have to, I would say, center yourself, come in with a clean slate, just no blinders, just total blank brain, if you want to call it that, and just take all of it in. And naturally, you try to see as many sides as possible to the subject, whatever it is. See as many sides there is, and then I would say look at it from what's the best way to put it? Look at it from or look at it in a Cliff Notes version. Just look at you don't have to read all these detailed books or these detailed articles. Just look at on the surface. On the surface, look at it, and on us humans, we kind of notice patterns. We kind of have a good intuition of things. We could tell when something's off. Even if we don't want to admit it, we could kind of tell something's off. And so anything that seems off to you, I would say put in one corner. Anything that's like, okay, this actually makes sense. Oh, let's put it in another corner, right? And then look at, once again, go back to both of those corners and then see for me, I always try to see if there's some type of conflict of interest. So the same guy pushing the vaccine, is he making money off the vaccine? Or these media companies talking about the vaccine. Wait, wasn't he just on the FDA board? So once again, just look at the conflict of interest, who if there's any type of shadiness going on. And then whatever you find from that, then at least for me, that's when I guess, after that, I look at what's left. And then I go into the hard research after that. Then I actually say, okay, this doctor, did he actually say this? Let me get actual quotes. Let me look at this actual study. And then after that, that's when I can actually make my final decision. Now, at the end of the day, it doesn't mean I'm right or I'm wrong, but I analyzed all of it in a fair, balanced way as much as I could. I'm probably missing something because we never know the full story, right? You have to know that you'll never know the full story. And then after that, you make your opinion. But at the same time, since the last step is having those actual documents, actual people saying certain quotes. So if anyone tried to check you on it, like, hey, bro, the Pfizer CEO said this, the study came out saying this. So that's how I came to my opinion. And so anyone who tries to get on you or whatever, no matter what, you're always going to have facts and legit stats at the end of the day.
I have a lot of friends who are physicians who've worked COVID units, right? And they generally are on the train that, just get the vaccine and whatnot, right? But I remember I was speaking to one of them, right? When Joe Rogan got COVID, and then he had Sanjay Gupta on the show, and I was talking to him after, and Sanjay Gupta was like insisting that he's like, hey, I think you should get the vaccine. He's like, why? I just had COVID. I have antibodies, etc. Um, so I was talking to my friend about this. We were, and again, he's a physician who works, and he's on the pro vaccine side. And I was like, does Joe Rogan need to get the vaccine? And he was like, no, he does not need to get the vaccine because of what he's just said. He's like, yeah. So the problem is that physicians are under there's always liability, right? If a physician starts making recommendations, don't get the vaccine,
Yeah.
and somebody dies because of COVID-19,
Mm-hmm.
their ass is on the line, right? You're gonna get sued, and who knows what happens, right? So I think there's always physicians have to. The thing in America is that physicians, I think, operate from this fear of. My own wife's a physician, by the way.
Okay.
And I think they operate from a fear of like not wanting to get sued and liability and having like liability coverage in a sense. So I think that's where it's just like, and the other problem is that like people, I think some people like as Americans, we're individualistic and stuff, but to be real, some people aren't that smart either. So if you give it in their hands, in a sense, like they will think, oh, because before they were like, oh, I probably had COVID, and they probably didn't, but they think they had it was a cold, and oh, it was COVID. They found it felt weird, and it really wasn't. And then if you make a statement that like, well, if you had it, then you really don't need it because you have natural immunity and stuff. But let's say you didn't have it, and then this dude actually does get it for real and he dies, then like so I think it can be kind of delicate in a way, but part of the problem I think is essentially the medical doctors are not. It doesn't seem like they have full autonomy to make the right decisions. There's so much policy and bureaucracy in a system that doesn't. So in a side note, so I was talking to my wife about Roe v. Wade, right? Because she's an actual obstetrician gynecologist, right? And so that's like really her field. And I was asking her about this whole issue of like women needing abortions for like medical conditions, and she's like, yeah, there are. Like and her fear is that like if it's overturned, that are there gonna be like enough is there infrastructure in place to support the people who actually need the real. Is there going to be enough causes in place to let them, if you really need to get, if you might die if you have a baby, because these are, she tells me about real cases that she's dealt with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not even like, if you don't have the abortion, both the mom and the baby are going to die, right? So she's worried about more red tape, so to speak. And I know the pro-life side, and even my own position is like, I would like to stop, you want to stop just a straight blanket access to abortion personally for like people who just screwed around and like just don't want the baby, right? That's how I think pro-lifers think about it, right? But then there's always these classes of people, and because of her field, I hear about these stories, like real stories of her, and when she tells me these stories, I'm like, that's hard to argue with that scenario, because this parent wanted to have the baby. It's not like they were like, they got pregnant and they're like, I don't want this kid. Like, no, we want to have the kid, but this is happening right now to my body, and I am like suffering, or I might die, or X, Y, and Z situation. And sometimes sometimes things happen like middle of the night, like pregnancy's going cool, some complication pops up, they rush her to the hospital 2 a.m, right? And they got to make a decision right there. Are you gonna pull the plug on this pregnancy, or are you gonna do, you know what I mean? So sometimes it's like, the doctors are always I feel like they're in fear of like, and I think that's where it is, like if it gets overturned and then they decide to like pull the plug or not, or the thing is, it's like kind of lose, because what if they decide not to pull the plug and the woman dies, right? And then they get sued either way. So there's a lot of things, but I think it comes down to, and it maybe even COVID and medical stuff in general, there's so much seems to be, as an outsider's perspective, like there's like too much, there's like too much meddling and bureaucracy and administration in there that doesn't let them actually do their job. You know what I mean? I don't know if you in your research have come across these kind of findings yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of want to, I guess, rewind just a little bit, because you asked me how do I look into stuff, and I kind of, even though I said it, I kind of want to give people like more practical thing. I hate when people say something like, well, how do I do that? So going off the abortion thing, since we're talking about that,
right?
I have a little notepad near me. So kind of going off what I was saying before, like I said, I would just cursory, just on the surface, look at both sides. Okay, so you have one side that's what they call pro-choice, right? So the woman should be able to have an abortion, no questions asked, and that's the thing. Okay, that's the pro-choice side. Pro-life, no, we have to keep that baby alive. No, just because you made a mistake, and there's different camps, right? Some people say even if it's incest or rape,
right,
the pro-life, some of them say, hey, keep the baby. Why does the baby deserve to lose a life just because of this unfortunate instance? So once again, I look at both of those on the surface. Okay, all right, I see both of those. Then once again, I try to see, once again, kind of the shady stuff. Okay, so the pro-choice, the pro-abortion people, I notice a lot of Congress people get paid by, or they get funding from Planned Parenthood. Okay, that's kind of yeah. So once again, I'm going to put that on one side, and I see the pro-life people. They tend to be on the more religious side. Okay, this guy's getting funding from this church and this pro-life group. Okay, so there's kind of some shady stuff on both sides, right? Then I'm going to go to the step right. I'm going to go to the step right under that and pretty much say, okay, so what? Let's start looking at this actual stats. Let's start looking at the stats. Well, how many women get abortions due to rape and incest? Because normally when people when pro-life people talk to them, well, what happened? The pro-life talk to the pro-choice people. Pro-choice people are always saying, well, what about rape and incest? Well, what's the stats on that? Is it most women who get abortions, or is it just a small minority, or is it the majority of women who, like you mentioned before, they made wrong decisions and they just want an easy way out? Once again, let's look at the stats. We're going to have to look at the stats, and let's look at the stats on the other side. How many women are willing to carry the baby to term and just get the baby adopted, or just drop it off at a fire station, that's still a thing that you can still do that. No questions asked. And so now that I have on both sides, I have my facts, all the studies, then I'm going to make my own decision after that. And no matter from what angle someone comes at me, I'm always going to have my stats. And once again, we're not talking about from a Muslim angle here, but it's situations like this, you can't be right or wrong. That's your opinion. You can't be right or wrong about your own opinion, right?
Right.
So
yeah, no, it makes sense. By the way, the answer on the rape, I had a guest on last week. It's 5%. 5% are due to rape. Okay. But I don't think, because I had to have my wife out. I don't know. I haven't seen a number for the number of abortions done due to actual medical reasons. Right. I haven't found that number out yet. I mean, I've got another podcast scheduled next week where we're going to get into it a little bit more with a chaplain who is a pro-life chaplain. Maybe she'll have those. Maybe she'll have those numbers. But yeah, I do appreciate. So I feel like I like your approach, and I just like to caveat it with adding in, like, if you have access to people who are like practitioners in the field, because they can give you some additional insights, and they wouldn't necessarily say on a podcast or a public platform, but you can take them out for like, so me, if you have a good network, you can then just, like, you're having coffee with them, you can pick their brain about stuff, and then they can kind of share some stuff with you. Like, obviously, I'm not going to mention my friend's name who mentioned that he would say, hey, Joe Rogan, you had to take the vaccine, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he wouldn't make it's an off the record thing, but it's like that helps you formulate the opinion, right? As well. When you talk to folks like that. So let's talk about some of these figures in the Manosphere who have had influence in your life, as far as, like, and you've given them a lot of credit. Mm-hmm. And I just want to kind of like have you like list off like how you found out about these guys, like, and then we'll go one by one, and then we can kind of like say with impact and how can people benefit. What's the benefit for people, mainly like Muslim men specifically, in taking from these guys. So let's start with Mike Cernovich.
Mike Cernovich. I'll say he's the one that in this specific context for me deserves the most praises, because he's the one who put me on the map, actually. And because I got like I mentioned like before, that one of my dreams, you could call it, is to do political religious commentary full time. I want to be in this space. I've been doing it for years now, but I really never was able to break in. And I seen his film Host. I recommend that film for anybody. Host. And I actually wrote I watched it, and then after that I tweeted something. I don't think it was related to the film though. I tweeted something after saying, Mike he's very fair. He stands up for everybody. He stands up for the Muslims, Christians. He's very fair, balanced guy. And I looked on my Twitter, and I didn't think it sent. I'm like, okay, so I did it again. I tweeted it again, and I'm like, okay, so it's a double tweet now. So I deleted one, and then right after that, he followed me. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's crazy. And then once again, not too long after that, I did a review of his film on, at the time, I think it was Periscope. Yeah, Periscope was still around, I think. Then he actually shared it, and all his viewers tuned into my thing, right? And sometimes periodically you'll see him retweet some of my things I have going on. And so I don't have a big follower base at all. Don't get me wrong, it was not even 2,000, but a lot of quality people follow me, and I'm like, wow. And so all those outside eyes are kind of looking at it, looking at me and my tweets, thanks to him, right? And then I guess to segue on, what does he have to offer? Not only is he thought-provoking, but I would say he's definitely, in my opinion, one of the most fair and balanced people, because we all have a bias. No matter, we all have a bias, but man, for him, he's close to the center you're going to get. And he comes out from all these different angles you didn't even know. He has obviously contacts from behind the scenes, and like you were mentioning before, kind of all things doctors can't say, or these media people can't say in the public, kind of say behind closed doors. He accesses those people like that. And so he's able to form opinions and actual, I guess, fact based on that, and inform us. And so it ranges from politics with him all the way to men's self-improvement stuff. And I've DM'd him, and meaning him, very brief, hey, what about this? What about this? Can you help with this? What does this mean? And he helps me. So he legit helps me, not only from a, I guess, DM level, but just all the information he puts out. And kind of give me, I may have skipped this, but I told people I was adopted, but the woman who adopted me, her husband passed away, so I didn't grow up with a father. And a lot of, and I seen a tweet earlier today saying that this guy kind of, it's sad how many of these guys looking for father figures on Twitter. And for me, that kind of triggered me a little bit, because I'm like, no, man, we have these guys who are influential. They are part of the quote unquote manosphere, and they're not taking advantages. They're legit trying to help us. And once again, I never had a father figure, and so why not have this person improve their life, even if the guy is only online looking at his tweets all day? If that's going to improve his life, make him a better man, why not? Why would I back somebody because of that? And so I'm taking benefit of that.
Yeah, I mean, I came across Mike Cernovich maybe around, I don't know, 2016 or so, when we first connected with Nabil Aziz, from Dubai, and I got to give Nabil a ton of credit, because I think Nabil was engaging with Mike, Ed Lattimore, and Alex way back before they had blown up to where they're at now, right? And I remember reading his book Guerrilla Mindset and whatnot, and I see that Mike gave Nabil like the platform to talk about Islam and Muslims for like 3 hours once, and just to like break it down as in a way, and in an unfiltered way, an unapologetic way. And sometimes we talk about being unapologetically Muslim, but you've got people who are even like who are afraid to really like lay it down. You know what I'm saying? So I do appreciate Mike for that. Let's talk about Alexander Cortez.
Yeah, Alexander. Yeah, you gotta say Alexander. You don't like Alex, say Alexander. No, man. Once again, I've DM'd him multiple times, asking him certain questions about things. He hollered back at me. And once again, he's the fitness guy, right? He is the fitness guy. And the interesting thing about him is he's known for his fitness, but man, there's so many other subcategories he's really good in, like history. Like I remember for every now and then he would post like historical profiles of like certain men in history and the lessons you can learn from them. Obviously he gets into the whole like red pill space on women and men and stuff like that. Don't agree with everything, obviously, but it's a huge benefit. So he specializes in fitness, which we all need more fitness and improve ourselves physically. But man, there's all these subcategories that this guy knows. I'm actually kind of looking. I actually have more interest in those than his fitness stuff a lot of the times. And so he's been very, very beneficial. I bought some of his courses, his fitness courses, and
right.
just, you know, I don't know the guy personally, I never met him, but
Yeah.
just solid guy. Like I say, I consider him a mentor. Like he's helped me so much.
Right. Yeah. I actually bought his Skinny Fat Manifesto maybe like a year and a half ago before I had my trainer. And I still find what I like about his programming is number one, it's very affordable, right? Nobody, if you like, it's like $20, man, sometimes for a program, you know, and then, you know, it's basically like, and it's like, it doesn't require you to be in the gym like for 2 hours a session.
I like
You
that.
can go in there for like 45 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
do your business, you know, warm up, cool to everything, and then just go. And he's so, and the thing I like about Alex is too is that like people like are asking for like, you know, shortcuts to like weight loss and fitness and strength gains,
Mm-hmm.
right? Always, you know, when I lost like my whole like cause I lost like 22 pounds in 90 days, and I've been able to more or less maintain that body composition, you know, since then, I lost Tofik. But I think it's like when people ask me, and I just like, listen, like I didn't cheat for 90 days, straight up. Like, and you got to hit the gym 3-4 days a week. Now I incorporate jujitsu into my routine with strength training, but it's like there is no like easy pill. Like, and I think that's what happened. Like, you know, everyone's trying to do keto or like low carb or like I'm just gonna go on a fast for like 6 days in a row. And or they go on these restrictive diets that they think they can like just suffer for 30, 60 days and they never get anywhere. And what I like about Alex's approach is that like he just like straight up like if you really want this, like he's like stop being he's really much like stop being don't be a bitch. You know, just do it. Like it's part of being a man. Is like just suck it up and get it done. And it becomes a lifestyle more or less than anything else. And I think when you treat it like just a fad thing, I'm just gonna do temporarily, it ain't gonna work. It's almost like same thing with being a practitioner of a religion.
Mm-hmm.
You don't you don't go hard for like six like a month or 2 months and then just chill and do nothing, right? It's not like you make spiritual gains and then just do nothing. You have to incorporate it in the lifestyle. You know what I mean? So I think that's what I like about his style as well. And I guess the last guy I was going to cover was Ed Lattimore.
Yeah. Um, I I guess out of all of them, I didn't really haven't engaged with him the most,
Yeah,
but I love his trolling. He trolls a lot,
yeah,
which is cool. But also his journey. You know, he was a boxer, right? But he has a degree in physics or something like that, right? He speaks Spanish, so he has once again he has all these different.
Well, I think is it Portuguese or Spanish?
Um,
I think it might be Portuguese.
well,
Just
one of them,
okay,
Portuguese. So he speaks a foreign language, you know.
right.
So he has all these, and one I say the main takeaway from him is I always get this, you know, never give up, you know, just no matter what your journey is, no matter where you're going, keep pushing it, right? Just keep pushing it. Don't take life so seriously. I think that's one reason why he trolls. Some people take him literally when he talks about crackheads and crack and stuff like that. Like people take him a little bit too literally.
Right.
No, just relax, calm down, bro. It's not that serious. And I'm just trying to remember of a time that I DM'd him, but I just can't I just can't think of anything. But just his expertise in so many different fields and actually how non-political he is actually kind of refreshing. When I'm with him, I can actually take a break and just look at his content. And once again, he's always trying to help people out. Once again, he always has affordable products out. You know, he has sales sometimes. So I think he's just like, for me, he I don't. At least for me, he doesn't necessarily have a specialty. He's got like a jack of all trades. Whatever you need, if it's fitness, if it's women, if it's travel, if it's a foreign language, if it's physics, he got you.
Right. No, I think no. So out of the three I mentioned, he's the one that I had the most because I met him in person, right? What I really appreciate about him is that I remember when I first heard of him, he was on Nabil's podcast and he was at the time still working as a warehouse guy at Amazon, right? If you look at time frame, he's become fully like independent now, right? Where he's making like he's making a solid income off his off his writing, his courses, his various products, etc. Right? And like he's able to live in Portugal throughout the year. But man, I'll just tell you, it was just like just a down to earth guy. I remember I just hit him up. Like my channel just hit 1,000 subscribers last weekend, right? When I started this channel in September of 2019, and at that time, maybe in the summer of 2020, I was going to take a road trip to Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and I just hit him up on Instagram. It's like, hey, man, I'm going to be in your area. You think we can link up and do a podcast? And he's like, yeah, sure. you know, so we met up for coffee and went back to my Airbnb and recorded this joint. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, this dude, they had no reason to like, I was just like, oh, I'm a friend of Nabil's, right? And so what, right? Like, I just felt like it was just a down to earth guy, and I think that's something. And I think the lesson, I think especially for content creators too, because as people get bigger in the Muslim content creator space specifically, I mean, you can't let your ego take over. You got to give time to people. You got to dance with the folks that brought you there. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of, and I think Ed has that in my experience, just a genuinely good person. And he was like, hey, I'd invite, he's like, I didn't invite you to my house, but my girlfriend is going to be like mad if like she finds out I'm inviting like people I met on social media, giving her their address and stuff. Cause I was going to like mail him something too as a gift. I just had a thing of coffee. I brought some coffee for him. Because he likes that dark coffee, right? That black coffee.
Well, yeah, that's another thing I learned. That's another thing that I learned from him that subhanAllah has helped me just drastically. That's nothing, man. Go ahead.
What? Just drinking black coffee? You mean?
Yeah, black coffee. Yeah, because I didn't know, because honestly, I'm not a coffee person at all. I'm not. And strange enough, I have a very high tolerance to caffeine. So if I need to wake up, I can't drink coffee. It does nothing. From even the most powerful coffee, doesn't do anything to me. But I remember one time he mentioned that it's a hunger suppressant also, and I didn't know that. I never knew that. If you just drink it black, it's a hunger suppressant. And so subhanAllah, that's helped me during Ramadan. Anytime I'm like, let me just stop being a fatty. That's helped me so much, bro. Really? So yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, that black coffee saved me. I
actually did not know all that about black coffee. Like I drink it black, as well. Some, not all the time, but sometimes if I'm gonna go out, treat myself, like tonight we're going out to, meet some friends at like just a Yemeni coffee shop that opened up in Chicago. But like, yeah, I'm not getting black coffee. But in general, yeah, I'll just make my double shot and just like chug that in the morning, right? It's quick, it's easy, it's on the way to work and whatnot. So yeah, man. Well, Darrick, I appreciate you coming on the channel today, man. Is there how can people find out more about you? And where can they follow you? Obviously Twitter. If they don't know your Twitter handle, it's, I guess, Red Pill Muslim.
Red Pill Muslim, yeah, that's where you can find me.
Are there any projects you're working on that people should be looking forward to, or what's next for you? I would say.
Honestly, I don't have any projects going on really. I'm kind of just trying to get my personal life situated, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I'm always open to podcasting with people, like I said, that religious, political commentary. Mm-hmm. But if I just wanted to add two things though, if that's okay.
Go ahead, go for it.
First thing I wanted to add was, in the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that I was my first foster family. I was actually, they baptized me, and a Lutheran Christian, all that type of stuff. And I wound up leaving that early on in a weird kind of way, because as a kid, you're not really anything, right? Before puberty, you're not anything. You just follow what your parents are. Yep. And I remember my thinking at the time is such a very, very childish thinking. I'm like, if I jump off a bridge, God won't save me. he won't at least cast this net and save me. That was my thinking as like a 6 or 7 year old. So I'm like, you know what? So since that's not going to happen, God doesn't exist. I said that. And so I'm like, I don't believe in Christianity anymore. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. But if there's anything people get from this podcast, to me, this is I'll say the most important thing for me, is that type of thinking is the type of thinking that we all are guilty of having, or let's say the side effects of that thinking. And I'll just put it this way, is that no one told me who God was, no one explained who God was to me, or why this or why that. So I had that super elementary and baby-like thinking, even at a young age. And so I'm speaking to myself first, mm-hmm. as a practicing Muslim, we have to know why we are doing things. We have to know why we are doing things. And I'm guilty. Like, does your average Muslim know, why we do, 10% of the things that we do? Allah knows best, but I think we're just kind of going through the motions, very sadly. And I actually came across a Yemeni brother who actually left Islam because he was just going through the motions. And he said his family was religious. He's like, yeah, they never told me why. We were just doing it. And, and he just looked elsewhere and, wanted to fulfill his desires. So just kind of go back on that. Just that point is just that, just make sure that, when we're trying to improve as Muslims and we're trying to, learn about the deen, let's know why we're doing these things. Why did Allah legislate these things for us? Because if we get the why, we get the purpose, we feel more fulfilled, then we're going to be more motivated to do it, right? Absolutely. The second thing I want to say is, once again, a reminder for me, inshallah, you and anyone on social media, for Muslims and non-Muslims, but specifically talking about the Muslims, is because I've kind of seen a trend here. And once again, only Allah knows the hearts, but out of protection for me and out of just as sincere advice for all of us is, like you said, keep your ego in check, keep your desires in check, and make sure anytime we're dealing with each other, are we doing, on social media, are we doing it in a halal manner? Are we doing it, correctly within the Islamic guidelines? Because what I'm seeing is, obviously, more Muslim podcasts are going on. I'm seeing on Instagram, I'm seeing these reverts. And once again, alhamdulillah, a lot of good content. I'm pretty sure they're sincere. I'm not saying they're doing anything nefarious, but at the same time, and especially these white sisters, convert sisters, may Allah bless them. You know what I mean? It's very fast to get an account that way. Some of these brothers from these converts from like other countries that we really don't know of, like Estonia, Iceland, whatever like that, they're coming up fast too. Just as a reminder for me, myself first, is that yes, we're all doing it for the sake of Allah, but let's check ourselves. Let's check ourselves. Once again, another demographic, right? Those Muslim married couples. Come on, guys. Let's make sure we're doing things the right way. We could get our dawah out. We could show people the beauty of Islam, but we got to make sure that we're correct with it, and once again, this is advice for myself too, because inshallah, I don't want to ever be caught slipping, chasing that fame / money, those likes, follows at the expense of my deen. And I don't want to be thinking in a corner of my room crying, like, why didn't someone like remind me or anything like that, so right. So those two last things I just wanted they were on my chest. I'm like, you know what, I just got to throw these reminders out for all of us, and just to keep us all in check. We all need that reminder, right? We all need that reminder. So,
well, I appreciate that reminder. I appreciate that. I think everyone will, like, we could always use a good reminder. There's something I was actually just remembered I was going to ask you, and you don't have to. If you don't want to answer this, we can cut this part out. But it's a pinned tweet on your Twitter. Mm-hmm. You, I guess, spent 30. You were on a search to find your biological father.
Yes.
And I guess you finally, I guess, found out who he was or something. Can you talk a little bit about that, or like the process behind like that, like what made you want to go that route? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you like want to know where you came from and all that, but can you walk us through that if you're comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as you said, it's just as a human, you want to know where you came from, right? You just want to know where you came from. Who are your parents? And when you're in foster care, it kind of makes it's even a big mystery, right? Because in the beginning, some of the foster parents, they want to hide who they are because they don't really want you interacting with them. So it's all those mysterious things. Then you wind up finding little information about them, like, oh, I actually found their name and the age, but you're still too young to do anything, right? So it's just mystery building up. You never know any of your biological parents. And I actually kind of want to start with my biological mom first. So basically, I didn't start my search really intensely until pretty much I graduated high school, because that's when I turned 18, right? So that's when I could actually do stuff. And subhanAllah, how Allah made everything happen is that when I was in the military, I actually had a sergeant, and he was actually like a father figure / uncle figure, to all of us. I love that dude. And it just came across me. I'm like, Sergeant, I'm actually, I'm adopted and also in the foster care agency, and I was wondering, can you help me find my parents? And he was like, oh, my wife actually knows how to find people. I'm like, oh, for real? I didn't have any information on my father at all. The guy, yeah. And so, but my mom, I had some of my siblings. I found some papers when I was younger. I was going through some papers I found that I wasn't supposed to see, maybe. And I seen his name and different things, or sorry, her name. And so I'm like, okay, here's the name and here's all the information. And then he got back to me. He was like, okay, we didn't find her, but we found your auntie. I'm like, wow, subhanAllah. And so what was that? I was around 19 or 20-ish, I wanted to say, when I actually met my biological mom for the first time. So, okay, so put that aside. Now I don't know anything about my father at all, like zero. I try to ask my biological mom about it. She doesn't want to say nothing or doesn't remember. So I'm kind of just take a back seat and kind of just let nothing happen. Alhamdulillah, I accept Islam. I'm starting making a lot of dua to Allah, like just every day, every day. And I'm like, man, I might even have to hire a private investigator. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to. I don't know what to do. And then I wound up taking the ancestry test. You can take the little ancestry.com test, right? I took that. That nothing there popped up. I think just a few relatives from my mom's side. So I'm like, damn. I'm like, what do I do? And we actually talked to a guy that my mom knew, a friend who was with her around that time. Like, did you see her with anybody else? It was this huge mystery, and I was going nowhere. But subhanAllah, finally, years later, I wound up taking the 23andMe test. You know, the 23andMe DNA test.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Everyone, people might get on me from that. Oh, you giving them your DNA? Blah blah. Anyways. So I did the 23andMe test, whatever, and subhanAllah, I was actually out with the brothers. We're actually doing like a masjid trip to the cabin, and I got my results, and subhanAllah, it said almost 50% father. I'm like, what? Crazy, right? Because 50% for mother, 50% for father, or close to it. I'm like, no way, this is real. No way, this is real. And so I messaged the person on there, and then I think it was one of his not grandkids, one of his stepkids that was on the thing, whatever, like that, were messaging. And so alhamdulillah, we're able to meet, and we agreed to do another DNA test, like an official lab one, not just an ancestry.com or whatever one. We want to do an official one. So we went to the whole LabCorp thing, whatever. We did that, and it came back like, that's your dad. That's your son. And so subhanAllah, bro, that was closure. That was closure. That I was asking Allah to give me in this life. I just, because every kid wants to know. That's just something that's built into us. That's our fitrah, right?
Right.
So this whole long journey from day zero to, what was that, 31 years old, that long. And then I finally met him, and just now I have that other part.
Yeah. Were you able to find siblings as well as a result?
Yes, I do have one. Sister, from him. He has one daughter. So yeah. And on my mom's side, I have like 4 or 5 siblings on her side.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important. I'm hoping things are, at least there's some kind of relationship there. It can be maintained and stuff. That's a nice thing to have, right? If it's really important. So, all right. With that being said, Darrick, I again appreciate you coming on. I think this is going to be a real beneficial episode for everybody to check out. For my listeners out there or viewers out there, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and smash that like button. And also check me out on the various audio platforms with Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you like to listen. And if you want to support the channel, the best way to do that is to roll on over to patreon.com/Sultans and Sneakers and become a patron. And if you don't have the means to support financially, just tell your friends about the show. And then follow us on the various social media platforms we're on. For my special guest, Darrick, the Red Pill Muslim, I'm your host, Maheen, the podcaster, signing off. What do you think, man?
Very good. That was a good one.
All right.